Have you ever noticed how the birds teach their young to fly by, eventually pushing them out of the nest? Yet as humans, we often reverse this natural order in our later years. What if moving closer to your adult children isn't the solution for your golden years, but rather the beginning of unexpected problems? Loss of space, loss of rhythm, sometimes even a loss of self. As we age, society often pushes us toward a seemingly logical choice: move closer to our children for support and companionship. But what if this conventional wisdom is flawed? What if this decision, made with the best intentions, actually undermines the very relationships and independence we cherish most? I'm Vernon. Today, we'll explore 5 profound reasons why maintaining some healthy distance from your adult children could be essential for your dignity, their growth, and the preservation of what matters most in your relationship. And I invite you to stay especially attentive to reason number 3. It contains an insight that might completely transform how you think about your living arrangements after 60. This isn't about rejecting closeness, it's about redefining it. If these are questions you've quietly held in your heart, you're not alone. Press like to help bring more light to this overlooked topic, and subscribe to the channel for more reflections on aging with courage, clarity, and grace. Before we begin, I should note that there are certainly situations where living close to family makes perfect sense. Serious health conditions, specific cultural traditions, or unique family dynamics. This isn't a one-size-fits-all issue, but rather an invitation to question assumptions we rarely examine. Reason number 1. The interference paradox. Let me begin with a gentle paradoxon that many don't notice until it quietly begins to erode their peace. We assume that physical closeness will naturally nurture emotional closeness, but not always. Our first consideration is what I call the interference paradox. When living near your adult children, boundaries often blur not out of malice, but familiarity. And that blur, over time, can strain rather than strengthen your bond. Consider my dear friend Elizabeth, who moved across the country at age 65 to be near her daughter's growing family in Colorado. With the best intentions, she purchased a home just 3 blocks away. Within 6 months, she found herself in an uncomfortable pattern. Her daughter would call last minute asking for babysitting, assuming Elizabeth's calendar was open. Her son-in-law would drop by unannounced for impromptu dinners, and Elizabeth began feeling that her own schedule and preferences were secondary. This experience isn't uncommon. A study in the Journal of Aging Studies found that when elderly parents live within a 20-minute drive of their adult children, there's a 67% higher likelihood of unrequested intervention in their daily life decisions. Researchers call this proximity-induced boundary dissolution. Even Aristotle understood this tension. He wrote that the closest relationships flourish best when they maintain a respectful space, like 2 trees with separate roots but gently touching branches. When parents and adult children share too much physical proximity without clear boundaries, it often leads to unspoken expectations, emotional fatigue, and a subtle loss of autonomy. So how can we honor love without surrendering space? Set expectations early. Before moving, have an open, gentle conversation about what kind of help you're comfortable offering. Protect personal rituals. Keep sacred a few non-negotiable routines that give rhythm to your week, whether it's a book club, a daily walk, or quiet mornings. Consider a 20-minute buffer. Being close enough to visit, but far enough to pause before habits form, can preserve both freedom and connection. Sometimes, a little physical distance creates just the emotional space both generations need to truly appreciate each other again. Are you prepared for the fact that your parenting opinions might create tension when observed daily rather than shared occasionally? What choices can you make today that maintain healthy boundaries while still fostering the loving connection you desire with your children. Share your thoughts or practices in the comments below. Your experience might be the gentle insight someone else needs to restore balance in their own family. Remember, the goal of your relationship with adult children isn't constant interaction, but meaningful connection. Reason number 2. The identity erosion. I used to be Dr. Williams, department chair, respected in my field. Now I'm just Sarah's grandpa who needs reminding about his medications. These words from my chess partner Richard, a retired professor who moved to be near his son's family after his wife passed, reveal a profound challenge that researchers call identity erosion, a subtle but powerful threat to your sense of self that often occurs when living near adult children. After decades of being the primary decision maker in your household, the parent, the guide, how will it feel to gradually shift into being the one who is checked on, advised, and sometimes even managed? This transition happens more quickly and completely when you live in close proximity to your children. What Richard experienced has been documented in gerontological research. A comprehensive study from the National Institute on Aging found that seniors who maintain some geographic distance from their children report significantly higher scores on measures of autonomy and personal identity maintenance compared to those living within the same community as their adult children. Interestingly, this phenomenon varies considerably across cultures. In Eastern societies where multi-generational households are traditional, specific cultural practices often preserve the elder's status and authority. A comparative study across Japanese, Indian, and American families found that in societies with strong filial piety traditions, elaborate social customs help maintain the elder's sense of identity and purpose despite close proximity. When living nearby, the practical realities often mean you become identified primarily as a resource, the emergency babysitter, the occasional cook, the extra pair of hands. These roles can be rewarding, certainly, but they shouldn't become your entire identity. One gentle solution is to intentionally cultivate a role outside the family, whether through volunteering, creative pursuits, or mentoring others in your field. Having a space where your identity is shaped by your own passions, not your proximity to your children, can preserve the sense of self that later life deserves. The philosopher Carl Jung spoke of the second half of life as a time for individuation, developing the fullness of your unique self. This essential work can be compromised when living arrangements place you primarily in service to others' needs and schedules. I encourage you to reflect on this question. What aspects of yourself, your interests, wisdom, skills, might go unexplored if your daily life becomes primarily oriented around your children's family needs? The answer may reveal important truths about your next chapter. Reason number 3. The expectation gap. This insight caught me off guard, and I've seen it reshape lives. Earlier, I mentioned that what you're about to hear might completely change the way you think about living near your adult children after 60. Here's why. Most of us imagine that physical proximity will naturally lead to more connection, more time together, and deeper bonds. But the truth? When elderly parents and their adult children are asked separately how often they expect to see one another after moving closer, their answers rarely match. Jennifer's story illustrates this perfectly. At 67, she sold her home in Arizona to move closer to her daughter's family in Minnesota. Jennifer envisioned weekly Sunday dinners, being deeply involved in her grandchildren's daily lives, and having her daughter drop by frequently for coffee and conversation. The reality? Her daughter's busy career and her grandchildren's packed activity schedules meant family gatherings happened maybe twice a month, often rushed. Her daughter rarely had time to simply drop by. The expectation gap led to feelings of rejection that Jennifer never anticipated. This isn't uncommon. A revealing study published in The Gerontologist examined 114 parent-child pairs and found substantial misalignment in expectations when elderly parents lived within close proximity to their adult children. Parents typically expected 2 to 3 times more interaction than their children anticipated providing. These mismatched expectations created significant relationship strain over time. Financial expectations often complicate this picture further. A 2023 survey by the Center for Retirement Research found that 42% of seniors who moved near adult children expected some form of financial cooperation, shared housing costs, split utility bills, etc., while only 17% of adult children anticipated the same arrangement. This misalignment frequently leads to tension over money matters that would have been avoided with separate households. To revisit our first 2 points, both the interference paradox and identity erosion challenges, these issues become especially problematic when expectations don't align. You may find yourself increasingly dependent on interactions your children simply cannot provide at the frequency you desire. One way to safeguard your emotional well-being is to cultivate a fulfilling daily rhythm that doesn't depend on your children's availability. Whether it's joining a local club, volunteering, or deepening a personal hobby. When your happiness is self-sustained, time with family becomes a bonus, not a necessity. As the philosopher Epictetus wisely counseled, make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. When we build our living arrangements around expectations of how others will interact with us, we place our happiness in factors outside our control. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is release others from expectations they cannot reasonably fulfill. In the end, closeness without clarity can quietly become distance in disguise. The right story at the right moment opens doors we didn't know were closed. Share this video along with someone else who might need it too. Reason number 4. The privacy boundary. Philosopher Hannah Arendt once warned us of this quiet truth that becomes especially pressing as we grow older. The more one gives up privacy, the more one gives up the possibility of being truly oneself. For many seniors who move closer to their adult children, this truth doesn't appear in grand gestures, but in the small, persistent erosion of private space. It often begins with good intentions. Shared meals, nearby support, family connection. But over time, something subtle shifts. A participant in a recent aging in place study put it plainly, "I'd rather face some risks on my own terms than be constantly safe but constantly observed." That tension between support and surveillance is one many older adults don't anticipate until it's already taken root. Thomas, a 72-year-old widower, moved to be near his son after his wife passed away. He expected companionship, maybe occasional help. What he didn't expect was that his dating life would suddenly become a family matter. When he began seeing a woman his son disapproved of, what should have been a private joy became a point of contention. Living near family can shift the center of control in subtle but significant ways. Your schedule, your purchases, your social interactions may begin to feel less like choices and more like items up for discussion. One practical way to preserve your sense of privacy is to establish soft boundaries, early rituals or habits that communicate when you're available and when you're not. Protecting your private time isn't selfish. It's a form of self-respect. Research from Northwestern University revealed that seniors particularly value what they termed information privacy, the right to selectively reveal personal information. When living near family, this selective disclosure often becomes impossible, as daily observations replace your ability to choose what you share and when. Are there aspects of your life you prefer to manage without input or observation from your children? Has privacy ever felt like a silent battle in your later years? Leave your comments with the phrase, "private by choice," to help others feel seen and supported. As the ancient Roman philosopher Marcus Aurelius observed, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing." Sometimes the most important boundaries to maintain are the invisible ones that protect our sense of self. Reason number 5. The legacy connection. Have you considered that maintaining some distance from your adult children might actually be the greatest gift you can give them? That creating space for both your continued growth might be essential for the legacy you hope to leave? Our fifth and final consideration is what I've come to call the legacy connection. My friend Harold, at 78, made the deliberate choice to remain in his hometown while his children lived in different states. When I asked him why, his answer was illuminating. He wants his grandchildren to know him as a whole person with his own community, interests, and contributions, not just as an appendage to their parents' lives who shows up for dinner. Harold understood intuitively what developmental psychologists have confirmed, that witnessing our parents maintain their autonomy and continue growing in their later years provides a powerful model for our own aging journey. The psychologist Erik Erikson identified the final stage of human development as integrity versus despair, the challenge of looking back on one's life with satisfaction rather than regret. Living arrangements that diminish your autonomy can unintentionally interfere with this essential psychological task. A thought-provoking longitudinal study from the University of Michigan tracked seniors over 15 years and found that those who maintained separate households from their adult children while staying connected emotionally were rated by those same children as having provided the most positive model for aging. A simple way to reinforce this kind of legacy is to cultivate a life that your children admire from a distance, whether it's joining a local club, mentoring in your community, or simply pursuing passions you never had time for before. Living meaningfully, even quietly, speaks louder than any lecture about aging well. This legacy of independence has profound cultural variations. Research comparing aging patterns in Northern European countries with those in Mediterranean societies shows fascinating differences. In Denmark and Sweden, where independent living is highly valued and supported by social systems, seniors report higher life satisfaction scores than in countries where multi-generational living is more common but less socially supported. Consider what message your living arrangement sends. Does it communicate continued self-determination and growth? What legacy regarding aging do you wish to leave for your children? The answer might reshape your thinking about the most loving choice you can make. Finding the balance. Practical wisdom. So where does this leave us? Am I suggesting that all seniors should live far from their adult children? Certainly not. What I am advocating is thoughtful consideration of alternatives to the automatic assumption that closer is better. Physical distance doesn't need to mean emotional distance. In fact, as we've explored, sometimes maintaining appropriate physical separation creates the conditions for deeper emotional connection. Here are specific approaches to finding the right balance. Proximity with purpose. Consider the nearby but separate approach, perhaps living in the same region but not the same neighborhood. This provides the security of being accessible in emergencies while preserving daily autonomy. Establish explicit communication rituals, regular video calls, planned visits, shared family chat groups that maintain connection without physical proximity. Create what psychologists call structured spontaneity. Planned occasions for casual interaction, perhaps monthly weekend visits where expectations are clear and both parties can prepare accordingly. Consider housing alternatives, retirement villages, co-housing arrangements, or naturally occurring retirement communities offer support systems outside the family structure. Finally, remember that this decision isn't permanent. As circumstances change, your health needs, their family situation remains open to reevaluating arrangements. Flexibility is itself a form of wisdom. As Aristotle taught us, virtue lies in finding the middle path, neither complete isolation from family nor complete dependence on them, but rather a thoughtful balance that honors both connection and autonomy. Conclusion. As we come to the end of our exploration, I'd like to leave you with a question rather than an answer. If you weren't trying to be a good parent, a helpful grandparent, or a convenient presence, where would you truly feel most alive? The right decision for you will depend on your values, relationships, health, finances, and many other factors specific to your life. What matters most is making this decision consciously, rather than defaulting to assumptions about what should be. Remember the wisdom of philosopher Martin Buber, who taught that the most meaningful relationships are those where we see each other as thou rather than it, as full persons with independent existence rather than as extensions of ourselves or resources for our end of needs. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Has distance or proximity to family shaped your aging experience? What unexpected challenges or benefits have you discovered? Share your story in the comments below. Your insights might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear. If you found value in this discussion, consider sharing it with someone facing these decisions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming video. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of life's deeper questions.